I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. I want to talk about a case that Donald Trump filed in Dutchess County, New York, that the media is not really covering. A hearing was held last week on it, and I think Donald Trump is going to be sanctioned in that case as well. It's particularly relevant because Donald Trump was just sanctioned in a federal court in the Southern District of Florida, close to $1 million for filing a frivolous lawsuit there. Trump has since withdrawn a number of other federal cases that he's filed. He hasn't withdrawn this specific lawsuit, and it's not, again, getting a lot of attention. I want to focus on it. It's a lawsuit that Donald Trump filed back in September of 2021 against the New York Times and several of its reporters, including Suzanne Craig, David Barstow, and some others. And Donald Trump claims in this lawsuit, Alina Habba was the lawyer who filed it on his behalf in New York State Court in Dutchess County, that Donald Trump's character, his reputation, was defamed when these New York Times reporters wrote about how Donald Trump was engaged in unlawful criminal schemes relating to his taxes and how he engaged in all this financial wrongdoing. And Donald Trump says that defamed my character, including there was an article that these New York Times reporters wrote talking about how Trump engaged in suspected tax schemes as he reaped riches. Well, here's what we know. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office just successfully prosecuted the Trump Organization, led by Donald Trump, for engaging in tax schemes. They're also investigating Donald Trump individually for engaging in tax schemes. We also know that the New York Attorney General, Letitia James, filed a $250 million lawsuit, or seeking at least $250 million for Donald Trump engaging in the Trump Organization and his adult children, engaging in fraudulent financial valuations where they reaped riches unjustly. And New York Attorney General Letitia James is seeking disgorgement. So Donald Trump filed this case saying his reputation was hurt. No, you engaged in criminal conduct. The New York Times engaged in legitimate reporting, and that maybe makes you upset that they exposed you. Their reporting shed light on a lot of your criminal conduct and was helpful in these criminal prosecutions, but there's no basis to file a lawsuit against them for that, other than the fact that you are so weak and you're such a coward with such a fragile ego that your only response reflexively is to file a lawsuit. And in this lawsuit, Donald Trump is seeking, get this, $100 million for what he argues is defamation of his character and other conduct that caused him harm. In the same lawsuit, you may also recall, if you remember this lawsuit, Donald Trump filed another cause of action, or some of the causes of action, against his niece, Mary Trump. So she's a defendant in this lawsuit as well. So a hearing was held last week before the state court judge, Judge Robert Reed. The New York Times is represented by a very well-known and successful First Amendment lawyer, David McCraw. And in David McCraw's argument, he basically said, look, what's most important, this is a quote from the oral argument at the hearing on the motion to dismiss Donald Trump's frivolous lawsuit. The lawyers for the New York Times said, look, what's most important about the articles at issue and to these proceedings is that the articles are true. And then Alina Habba basically responds, well, there's this line when you're in the trenches as reporters with Miss Trump, with Mary Trump, when she was going to her attorney's office, and the New York Times, they were giving Mary Trump burner phones to converse with her and walk her through the steps and have meetings with her. The New York Times, they were just, this is what Alina Habba is actually arguing. The New York Times was so aggressive with something that, frankly, Congress couldn't even get the hands on themselves. And then McGraw, the lawyer for the New York Times, said, well, if you really want a burner phone, we're happy to get you on it. And who cares? What are you talking about? McGraw goes, quote, "It's not crazy for people to try to protect their sources. There's nothing particularly interesting and certainly nothing that is legally significant about anything that you said." And one of the things that Judge Reed turned to Alina Habba and said is, you keep using this word ordered, like the New York Times is ordering Mary Trump to do things. The judge goes, what authority did they, the New York Times, exercise over Mary Trump, over her, such that she, a grown woman, a licensed clinical psychologist, could be compelled by Sue Craig or any other reporter at the New York Times to take any action? So Judge Reed, again, very skeptical of Alina Habba's theatrics in courts. Like, what are you even talking about, Alina Habba? And then you got to hear from Mary Trump's lawyer, a lawyer from the law firm of Gibson Dunn, known as, and her name is Ann Champion, was Mary Trump's lawyer. And Mary Trump's lawyer is basically saying, look, Donald Trump talks about this stuff in public all the time. He talks about his finances. He talks about the inheritance deal. He talks about the trust. He talks about all of these things. And so there's nothing confidential that Mary Trump is revealing to the New York Times. And if anything, Donald Trump broke any of the confidentiality itself. Also, this so-called confidentiality, it's unenforceable. And just look, another court had previously made the decision that would allow Mary Trump to publish her book when Donald Trump sued to try to stop Mary Trump from publishing her book. And what the court basically said is, look, Donald Trump's finances may or may not have been an interest back when he was just a business person, but in 2018, they would seem to be a matter of public interest when you become the president of the United States. And the judge said the following, quote, "We don't ask celebrities to hand over their taxes, but we routinely ask presidents to hand over their taxes." Think very strong words by Judge Reed there. So we don't have the order yet on where Judge Reed is going to rule, if he's going to grant the motion to dismiss that was filed by the New York Times and Mary Trump. But it seems pretty clear that the law would say that this lawsuit filed by Donald Trump is frivolous. It's frivolous, one, on the grounds that what is being reported and discussed is true. Truth is the ultimate defense to defamation, and Donald Trump has been, through the Trump Organization, that Donald Trump himself has been investigated. Donald Trump has been sued by the New York Attorney General for engaging in this exact conduct, and the Trump Organization has lost a criminal trial. They're now a felony organization. They're a felonious criminal enterprise, the Trump Organization. So there's a matter of judicial notice. It's a public record that the reporting's actually true. But then number two, this was of public interest. And there's something called an anti-SLAPP statute. And one of the things that the New York Times argued is that what Donald Trump is engaged in is a strategic lawsuit against public speech, against the ability of the New York Times to engage in its core reporting functions, where it engages in important First Amendment discourse, and that Donald Trump is trying to silence that important discourse. So if the New York Times wins its anti-SLAPP motion, and that's one of the things it's asking for, the New York Times and its reporters can also be awarded attorney's fees, and that could be a significant number. It could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'll point your attention to, this was a tweet by Suzanne Craig. And so as everyone's talking about all these other cases where Donald Trump's being sanctioned, this one just didn't get a lot of attention. Suzanne Craig explained, "So here's the thing. I was in court today because Donald Trump is suing me, the New York Times and my colleagues, for $100 million for doing our jobs. Stuff like knocking on doors and asking for documents. The suit is ridiculous. Today, a judge heard arguments on our motion to dismiss. A silver lining today was getting to hear the peerless David McGraw handle oral arguments for Team New York Times. He's the real deal and on the front lines for us and the First Amendment every day. So we will keep you updated if Trump is sanctioned in that lawsuit. We'll give you updates if Mary Trump and the New York Times and Suzanne Craig and David Barstow and the others Trump frivolously sued prevail in their case. But I thought it was very important, because a lot of media is not talking about this, to remind you of this frivolous case Trump filed back in Dutchess County on September of 2021, that this case is still pending, that Trump's frivolous lawsuits are still impacting the lives of many people who certainly don't deserve to be sued, that even though Trump was sanctioned $1 million by a federal judge in Florida, and that Trump has withdrawn a lot of these other federal cases that he's filed, he's still so caught up in his hatred of the New York Times. He's so jealous that they've won Pulitzer Prizes for their reporting, exposing his wrongdoing and corruption. He just can't have it to dismiss this one voluntarily. And so I think the judge will ultimately do that, and the judge is going to dismiss this case. But we'll see. We'll keep you updated. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We are on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. Hit subscribe. Also, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. That's patreon.com/MeidasTouch. We've got a lot of exclusive content there, but most importantly, it helps grow this independent media platform. So check it out. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
At MeidasTouch, we are unapologetically pro-democracy, and we demand justice and accountability. That's why we're spreading our message to Convict 45. That's right, gear up right now with your Convict 45 tees and pins at store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.